So for the third and final open of the year, we found ourselves on Barnett Reservoir in Mississippi, and this place is absolutely beautiful. It's got a ton of cover, a ton of vegetation, and you can fish a frog like I'm doing here, just going down the bank, throwing a floating frog, catching some solid keepers. And the problem with this lake is there's very few fish and very far between, especially this time of year in the fall. They get spread out. It's really hard to find a good concentration of fish, but I finally did that during the tournament. But here's some action from the week's practice. Got to spend 4 or 5 days out on the lake and caught several nice fish, but again, they're just few and far between. You couldn't catch a real big concentration of good fish, and that was the biggest problem.
Yep.
There's no shortage of lily pads on Ross Barnett. It's probably the most abundant cover there is, and it's some of the best stuff you'll ever see to fish. It looks beautiful, but it is almost impossible to get fish out of it unless you have one volunteer like this little spot did right here on the edge of the lily pads. But once you get a fish hung over in the lily pads, I mean, you're looking at maybe getting half of them out of there if you're lucky. And there's some really good fish over in there you see here. Caught that one on swimming caffeine shad, and that's really the pattern I kind of developed throughout practice. Caught another nice fish here on the last day of practice right before the tournament started. It's 4.5 pounder. Caught it on a rage toad, but you need those kind of bites during the tournament for sure. As is typically the case when tournament fishing, we had a nasty cold front roll in right there before day one, and day one morning started off cool and wet. Caught this little keeper right quick in an area that I'd hoped I'd be able to catch a limit or at least 3 or 4 small keepers to get the day started, but fortunately that was the only fish that came out of that area. Moved on back to some of the thicker lily pads and had a couple opportunities early. Didn't pan out for me too well here, and that's just one of those deals. I had 5 keepers on day one. I had 7 keeper bites, so I was kind of glad to have 5 for 7. This is a big fish here that I missed a few times, and actually came back and got it finally.
Yeah! Oh, jeez. Look at that bad boy right there. That's a giant. That's a giant.
Good job, man. Good job.
Yeah!
Perseverance. Paid off.
Like the third with a net.
When you know you're around that size fish and you can't get them in the boat, it's very frustrating. And here I got in a little bit of a hurry and was trying to troll into an area, and I missed a giant again. Bass fishing is a game of inches for sure, and I was probably 10 inches throughout the week away from 20 or 30 more keepers. Had a lot of fish blowing up on the bait, a lot of fish trying to get it. Just I wasn't able to figure out exactly how to get them. And once you hook them, you see here I sped things up a little bit, but you basically just got to hook them, hang them up, and try to go get them. If you try to pull them out, you're going to usually pull them off or break your line or break your hook or break something. Something's got to give when you're in that thick vegetation, and typically you're not going to come out in the winter. This little guy made keeper number 5 for day one. Gave me 11 pounds, 12 ounces, I believe. I was sitting in 11th place going into day 2, and I'm in a good position to do some good and make a run at this thing. I started day 2 in the area that I ended day 1. There were a lot of fish blowing up that morning. James Overstreet, our photographer for bass, actually pulled in on me that morning and watched me miss several good ones. And I would miss them on the swimming caffeine shad. I'd pick up a Strike King KVD frog, throw it in there. They'd knock it 3 or 4 feet in the air. I tried pitching a soft plastic in there to try to get them to get it, but they didn't want it unless it was on top, and then they didn't want it. They just didn't want it in the area. So I had a really hard time putting fish in the boat. Caught this one, was my first keeper of the day at about 11 o'clock, and I was glad to get it and thought things might be turning on when that evening bite got started after that cold front pushed through the day before, but I believe that was wishful thinking for the most part. It was a grind on day 2 for sure, and I caught this little keeper here, and when it buried up in the pads, I thought it might be a decent fish, but I was a little dejected to see it. It was a 12-inch squeaker, but at the time I was really glad to get it. 12 inches was a big deal just to have another keeper. Unfortunately, day 2 ended about like day 2 started. I had another area with a lot of bait and a lot of big fish in it. between me and my co-angler, we probably had 25 fish blow up on a bait. Try to get it, anything from a swimming caffeine shad to a floating frog. We even tried dead sticking like an ocho and pitching soft plastics over in the pads, and they just wouldn't get anything. They'd boil on everything we threw in there. You let it sink and just jig it up and down. They still just boil on it whenever it came to the surface. Very frustrating fishing, to say the least. Ended up with three small keepers for 5 pounds. And it's enough to get me a good check and a solid finish at 21st place, but not the end of the season that I'd hoped for. Looking forward to maybe one more shot at the Classic. Hadn't decided if I'm going to fish the wild card down in Okeechobee in December yet, but if not, I'm definitely looking forward to 2014, the Bassmaster Opens, and definitely ready to get back out there and get back after them. Wish me luck.